Hey everyone, time for another 3 at 3 on solar PV. I'm Jen Runyon, Chief Editor of Renewable Energy World.
I'm Paula Mintz, Chief Market Research Analyst, SPV Market Research.
Hey Paula.
Hey Jen, been a
Hey.
while. Missed you.
It has been a while. We dealt with some illness and a little travel, and we're all back and healthy now, thank goodness. So, we take three topics, we talk about them for 3 minutes each, and this week we're going to talk about solar jobs. There's a new report out this week, the Solar Jobs Census, put out by the Solar Foundation. We're also going to talk about some manufacturing announcements that have happened in the past couple of weeks based on as reactions to the tariffs. We'll discuss a little bit in that. Then we're going to talk about R&D funding for solar research and development, important things for our industry.
Very important.
Really important. Well, let's start with jobs. So the Solar Foundation released their report this week. What they do is they survey the solar industry, and they came out with in 2017 the solar industry in the United States employed 9,800 people less than it employed in 2016. So they're saying it's a 4% drop in employment. A little scary.
So, can I ask you, Jen, in their study, since you've seen it and I have not, did they indicate their margin of error?
They
Plus or
do.
minus how many jobs? What
They
is it?
no, they just give a percentage, and it's like it's 1.25 plus or minus margin of error.
Okay. Um, well, given that I do not know the sample size, the methodology, given that the outreach has started last year, given that no one I've surveyed has laid anyone off, I do know of some layoffs in some companies in the industry in the US, but given that those are my facts on the ground, I think I can presume that given their results, jobs could be down in the solar related jobs along
Yeah,
the solar
so
value chain
yeah.
could be down maybe 2%. That would be more my guess.
Okay.
I'm not going to quibble with them. That's still down.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
that's
what's scary to me, and I said this to you before, Paula. I was visiting my parents, and so they read these headlines and they go, "Oh, look, solar jobs are down, and it's all because of President Trump putting these taxes on solar panels." And so I mean, I just wanted to be very clear on this program that jobs may be down, but this is not the fault of President Trump. Unfortunately, I mean, people blame
I,
him for a lot of things.
I hardly want to not fault President Trump, sorry, or Mr. Trump, but the fact is that first of all, without knowing what the companies indicated in why they laid people off, if they had any new hires, if they're planning hires next year, I would imagine that it predated tariffs, quite candidly. There
Yeah,
certainly were direct manufacturing jobs lost because of Geneva.
right.
So
Yep.
some are
They laid
there,
off people in 2017 for sure.
etc. But so yeah, that wasn't Trump's tariffs. That was inability to compete.
Right.
And we could have a longer discussion on that, but I'll take it away. If we want to look at it this way, and this is an evil way that an analyst never looks at anything, it's not evil, it's good for us, is that if people outside the solar industry who don't really understand it are reading that and assuming that he's damaging this vital industry for the US, that may be actually pretty good PR. Now, back to the
For
report.
solar, you're saying.
Right. Now
Okay.
back to the report for a second. One thing a market research analyst always has to watch for is bias.
Yep.
So if there was any presumption in the way questions were asked, and I do not know this, that jobs were going to be lost, because I know it took place after, when the tariffs were moving forward through the US ITC, et cetera.
Yeah.
So if there's any presumption in the methodology about this, that would lead to a bias.
I see
And
what
I
you're saying.
can assure you there's a presumption there might have, well, I can't assure you because I wasn't there, but there could very well have been a presumption to push the numbers slightly higher because it's not everybody in the US ever that's being surveyed. It's a sample size that's representative.
Do you
And
mean
from
to
what
push? Do you mean to push the number of layoffs higher, or to push the number of jobs higher?
so you have a sample size that is a representative of the whole, but not the whole. So if your bias is to say, okay, this is what happened in this group, so it must be here, you have a bias to show job loss.
Yeah, well,
Is
yeah.
my point.
I
It's
see what
just
you're
like
saying.
before the election in 2016, the bias of pretty much everybody, except for a couple of pollsters, was to say that Hillary had it walking away and this guy couldn't possibly win. And that's a flaw, as we've discussed in methodology.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, you could look at it this way. It's good for getting news out that he's not good for solar. And certainly the Trump administration has shown ample times that he's not.
Yes. Yes, true. And so, that's why we are discussing the Trump effect. I mean, the point I would like to make, though, is that nobody likes uncertainty. And the minute the idea of tariffs was floated, which happened in May when Suniva and Solar World joined together. Suniva filed it first, the straight case, then Solar World joined. That slows down things. I mean, just the idea of a tariff absolutely adds some. I believe it does.
I don't, and the facts don't really show that. So it adds uncertainty in people's minds, but people are economic beasts, and they take a look at their economic benefit, and a lot of this stuff is already going ahead in terms of deals being made, right?
Sure,
And
okay, maybe, yeah.
so no, it adds uncertainty. That's what makes the stock market go up and down. Right now, it's probably a correction plus, what's going to happen with interest rates. And that,
Yeah.
by the way, is more likely to be the issue. The new tax reform is more likely to be an issue with larger projects.
Sure.
You've got the assumption interest rates or cost of money. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more, and the tariffs we don't know the effect of yet. It's been implemented or not extremely poorly. So we don't
Yeah.
know if there's going to, the 2012
Right.
tariffs, 2014 tariffs, really, they impacted for the small guys, module prices, did not impact module prices for the bigger guys.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
So yeah, there was uncertainty, but out of uncertainty grows PR announcements
Yeah.
where people say, well, this is it, I'm uncertain, we're not going to hire, we're going to lay off, deals aren't going to go ahead, and all that's done to influence.
Yes.
So
You've said that before. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's pivot and then talk about some manufacturing announcements. So there was a rumor that Jinko Solar is talking about opening a manufacturing plant for solar modules, considering Project Volt, considering solar modules or solar cells in Florida, here in the United States. Very big manufacturing plant, reportedly 1.75 gigawatts. That's pretty huge. How quickly do you think they could get something like that up and running?
Well, if indeed they do it, they have gotten apparently their approvals fairly quickly. But if indeed they do it, the smart money would be on module assembly, and that would fit in with how much module assembly the U.S. has now, and how much then they can import over and above that without tariffs. They can also get cells, by the way, from India, and that would be or the little tiny bit that there is in Turkey. But so the smart money would be module assembly. It won't be overnight, no, because we have different standards. I know for a fact that in Asia, the tolerances are wider. They're narrow for modules and cells that go into the U.S. and other markets with higher standards.
Oh, interesting.
But in most cases, for their domestic markets, they may be pretty wide. Also, there's the QA. So these low margins drive, as we've discussed many times, methods of saving money. In this case, visual inspection of cells, which is not good enough, or cameras, which is not good enough. That stuff is not going to fly in the U.S. Labor costs are higher here. There is still a higher cost structure here.
Yes.
and a market that is ITC based. So I would say smart money, and I'm an analyst, so I'm so not a betting girl. I mean, the last time I played blackjack, I bet $5, lost
Did you lose
less.
it? Oh, well, that was probably
I,
the last time you're ever going to bet anyway.
yeah, well, it was actually just the heck, you know. Somebody actually gave me the $5. Seriously, is my own $5 not going to bet it anyway? So the smart money, however, to speak in betting lingo, would be on module assembly. That will go up faster. You still have to go through pilot scale. It's not overnight. Truncating pilot scale and these other things leads to lower quality. It just does.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're going to do cells. They're still going to have to go. It's a longer pilot scale. It's like years, right? You're bumping up on the end of the ITC. So
Yeah.
this is the market in the US is the ITC. So then Jinko would have to say, so if this is when so am I going to bet it's extended, or am I going to bet it goes away? Am I going to bet that in the intervening years something happens to disrupt it? Am I going to bet that Canada will suddenly boom into a multi-gigawatt market?
Yeah.
I would bet that. Am I going to be serving Latin America, or am I going to be serving the Caribbean? So their decision, and their business people, is an economic, as we were discussing earlier, it's an economic decision. It's not just the U.S. market, but it's the ability to serve the U.S. market and other things. So it's quite possible they will come out with module assembly, but it's not going to be overnight.
Well, so I mean, honestly, though, how long does it take? I know you and I have discussed it can be up to 4 years, and obviously, if they were building something in order to circumvent tariffs, that would not make any sense because the tariffs won't exist in 4 years.
That would be cells, let's just say
Okay, so cells is more on the 4 year side. So modules, how quickly? Honestly, 6 months?
Well, if you
No,
like a
okay.
year,
A year.
and a half.
All right.
Still have pilot scale. Year and a half. So you don't truncate me there. Don't cut my half a year off.
All right,
So
year and a half. Okay.
So in that range, and you're moving mountains through the pilot scale process doing that. Your margins aren't going to be that good in the U.S. So they're pretty bad.
Yeah,
they're bad in China. They're not going to be that good here. You're going to have to get your certifications to be accepted by the utility scale market and the small guys. It can be, let's just say, 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
And that's starting to run.
And my heat is making a lot of noise, so people are going to hear these weird noises in the background. It's my heater.
That's right.
Anyway,
Don't
sorry.
worry about the heater.
Yeah.
She's not going to blow up, we promise.
Yeah, it's fine.
So either way, you're marching towards kind of the end of the ITC.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Right.
that would be in their mind. However, again, as a jumping off point, you're also serving Canada, Caribbean, and Latin
those are
America.
great points. Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be more expensive here.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it depends. And I see. Okay, so Longhi is making a bet on India, supposedly.
Right.
So they announced a 500 megawatt module assembly plant that everybody said was fact. Beware of announcements. And then they said, nah, we're not going to do that. Now, they're going to do it a gigawatt, and they're going to have cells there too. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll
So-
see. Yeah, we have an article coming up from Longhi in our next issue, March-April issue, so people can read about their plans as well. Let's move on to another announcement. Apparently a draft budget proposal that the White House put out cutting clean energy research by 72%. Now, I would like to point out this very similar, very drastic cut was announced last year, could not make it through Congress, not even through Congress. So again, the likelihood of this 72% cut actually taking place is pretty slim. However, cutting research is never good.
No, it's the reason, not the tariffs. It's the not solely low-priced imports. That is part of it, by the way. Manufacturers who complain that they're can't compete have a point. We can't just say it's bad for the industry because it may be not good for part of it, but it's a really. It's like if I tried to sell market research report just, for $5 and somebody comes in and says, I'll sell it to you for $0.25.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, by the quarter. That's right.
Yeah, I can't
But
possibly
so,
compete with that.
um, um, but since I have history of solar written down from strategies way back to the 1970s, there's typically there are cuts to DOE budget for solar research.
Mm.
That is the primary reason we don't have a lot of manufacturing.
Well, that's an
And
interesting point. Yeah.
and and then, unfortunately, we have made some poor bets in this country. We made the Solyndra bet, the
Yeah.
grant for the Solyndra, which then everybody uses as a banner of why not to invest in solar. Really, it was why not to invest in that solar.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not invest in crystalline. It works. There's nothing wrong with thin films. You know what I mean. But seriously, nothing wrong with thin films, and you do have to take risks. But there's, this would be last year it would have pretty much choked off NREL.
Yeah.
And that's our national lab. That should be a jewel. I mean, it has Republican and Democrat support. If you're a Republican in a state with solar jobs, you're not going to want to see those jobs go away. So
Absolutely not. Right.
unlikely, but the new budget they just passed that I think gets us to March or something. I don't know what this one is. I've given up. But
Yeah,
it's
March.
lots of money for the military. Cuts are going to have to come. And they're coming from programs for the poor.
Yeah.
So could they come from programs for solar? Very easily. Will it be 72%? I doubt it. Will Congress just refuse to let that happen? Maybe.
But we'll see. We'll let you know when we know. That's all that we have time for today, everybody. Thanks for joining us on 3 at 3 on Solar PV. See you next time.